think I might have to. You don't want that. Good morning.
Good morning. Good morning.
Good morning to all of you. And thank you for the perfect song. Absolutely perfect. Thank you so much. I had the rock in my pocket on the way here that says, "Be still and know." So it's all good. It's good. So I believe you're going to witness a healing today, right before your eyes. And hopefully it's going to be mine. I'd like to start with something. Marilyn, you will appreciate this. This is the daily word from December 7th, 1941. Okay. Dear God, you are almighty. Your pure love animates all creation. May your goodness be in every moment of my life. May every thought and word be your dominion. For you alone are all that is true and everlasting. I chose to start with a prayer because of a lesson I learned many years ago. When you're stressed out and you're not sure what to say next, you start with a prayer. So that was my choice. And today the talk is about basic goodness. Daily we're surrounded by distractions, the to-do list, and the just plain old busyness. We sometimes forget the basic truth that there is something unconditionally good about ourselves, what Emily Cady calls the divine mind. It's always there, right beneath the surface, enthusiastically ready to be our very best friend, to guide us, to be expressed through us. Life really is built on relationships. I learned that as a chaplain. All life is about relationships. The relationship you have with yourself, the relationship you have with God, your loved ones, your friends, acquaintances, your dog, your car. It's all about relationship, your job, your children, your plants, the world. But I believe that the main relationship is the one that we have with what I call basic goodness. I'd like to share a story with you that offers some simple practices to nurture this relationship, or how I found to nurture my own relationship with the basic goodness, and support us all on our journey as we learn to express our own personal basic goodness. Does anyone have an intense fear that can cripple you to the point of being paralyzed? Just a couple. You guys are pretty strong. Well, I do, and even though I've conquered it many, many times, I'm going to share it with you today. And that's where I believe my healing will come from. 20 years ago, I took an adventure that forever changed my life. I had just begun on the Unity journey with a church in Raleigh, North Carolina. Had a wonderful minister, a wonderful program, and every Christmas we would bring a special guest speaker, and she showed up every year at Christmas time, right before everybody did their taxes, get that last minute in, and she would talk about prosperity. Now, she had been a Unity minister since 1979, and she has an amazing Southern accent.
I know what you mean.
Okay.
I figured that was who you were talking about.
Edwin Gaines.
Yep.
Yes. Well, she would come every December, and I was drawn to her and her craziness and her willingness to tell you like it is to your face and shaking your finger and say, "Now, sugar, you gotta change." And we'd all sit up straight and we would change. So 20 years ago, I took an adventure that forever changed my life. I'd never been on a spiritual retreat before. I had 3 young boys and a toddler in diapers. But somehow I was drawn to the Blue Ridge Mountains to go and be with Edwin Gaines. So I got in a car with 2 best friends after saving up money by doing odd jobs and pulling weeds for the neighbors so that I'd have enough money to go on this trip. And we hopped in the car and we drove for, 9, 10 hours. We started in North Carolina, we went to Tennessee, and then we went to Georgia, and then we ended up in Mentone, Alabama. Population 460. It was a lovely little town. It was spotted with log homes, and it had this incredible church there. It was called the Sally Howard Baptist Church, and a gentleman built it. It had a huge rock for the pulpit. So the church was built around it, so when you walked in, there was this huge rock, and that's where it was. And above the rock was a statement that his wife would always say before she passed. It said, God has always been as good to me as I would let him be. Well, that's one to think about, isn't it? Yeah, basic goodness. So we arrived, met Edwin and the gang and got settled, and our first day we went to a room, and all I remembered is being white, a lot of chairs, and lots of windows looking out at the beautiful trees. And we all sat around, and like I said, I'd never been to one of these before, so I was a little nervous, a little, apprehensive, didn't know what was going to happen. And so she started off telling us about how good we were, and God is good, and God is great, and she's fantastic. And then she asked us all to introduce ourselves, share a little something about who we are, what our intention was for the weekend. And then she said, if you feel like it, share your deepest fear. Okay, that's not a big tall order now, is it? Number one, I don't know any of these people in the room but my 2 friends, and I'm like, okay, I can do this. I can handle this. So she went around the room and everybody was talking, and as it got closer and closer to me, I realized I was getting more and more nervous. And she finally addressed me and she says, okay, sugar, it's your turn. And I said, I think I introduced myself, but in retrospect, I'm not sure what I said, because all of a sudden she said, stop right there. Honey, you get up here, get behind this mic. I want you to announce it to everybody. I went into complete freak mode. What I had said out loud was that I didn't think I knew of any fears. I know I must, but I couldn't express any of them. Well, she immediately put me up behind a mic. I started quivering. I cried. I had snot coming out of my nose. And I was shaking, and she knew it. She knew it the minute I opened my mouth, that that was my weakness, that that was my fear. And she kept me up there as long as it took for me to break and be able to speak clearly. Then she started squawking at me, as she does. She said, you, my dear, are a child of God. God doesn't make any trash. I just stood there and took it. Then she taught me about box breathing. So this is all up in front of the whole crowd, so I was on display. So she said, do some box breathing. So you can take this as a note. This is what she taught me. She said, breathe in 4 counts. Hold 4 counts. Breathe out 4 counts. Settle for 4 counts. Breathe in for 4 counts. Hold for 4 counts. Breathe out for 4 counts. Settle for 4 counts. She had me do that about 4 times. I completely relaxed. And then I kind of looked around the room, and everybody looked like my friend. I was no longer afraid of them. I was no longer afraid of being in front of the microphone. It was an aha moment for me. And it was as simple as breathing. I learned I needed to trust myself. I needed to trust a power higher than myself, that which I call basic goodness. When we're in these situations, we tend to have a tendency to not trust ourselves when we should. Trust that inner goodness. Have you ever had that time in your life, it was set so deeply that you didn't trust yourself? You had a fear that was so deep you didn't trust yourself, even though you knew God was with you, holding your hand, right there within you, around you. There was no place that God wasn't. How can any situation be wrong for you to be in? There's something there for you to learn, to value, to be part of. You're put there for a reason. And that's what she told me. You're up there for a reason, honey, because you're my example. Gee, thanks. The one important thing she asked me, and I said she asked me, she didn't tell me this. She said, please don't be afraid of who you are. Don't be afraid of it. So I realized that day it really wasn't so much the fear of speaking in public, which is what most people fear. I mean, that's one of the highest fears that there is. It was, I was afraid to be me in front of other people. Right? So it shifted the way that I looked at it. Now, as I said, this still does affect me. I sat in that chair, and that's why I'm so grateful for your song, because I have had more anxiety today and yesterday than I have had in years. I thought I was through this. And this is what I want to share, is that we do make accomplishments. We do climb the ladder. And every time we think that we've cleared something completely away, it's okay if you have to revisit that pain. It's okay that you have to face yourself again in the mirror, because that's when you see your own personal God self. So that was my first day on the retreat. I slept really good that night. The following day, we were requested to stay in solitude and silence all day. So there was no communication with anybody else. Well, I had just met everybody and stuck myself out there like, look, I'm raw, check me out. And so I wanted to talk, I wanted to share with people, but that wasn't our option. She gave us tools throughout the location. We were free to hike and sit and write, and then she had tables set up where we could paint, finger paint, and script and draw pictures and write. And so we spent the whole day that way, and we ate in silence. It was to be true to ourselves, to be fully present and not be caught up in the minutia. So I chose a writing out of her book, The 4 Spiritual Laws of Prosperity. And this is what she said to us that day also, in other words. It is in the quiet times of reflection and contemplation that we open ourselves to rich ideas. Give yourself the gift of some time alone. We must all have a habit of solitude, regularly spending time alone in the silence by taking a walk in the woods, sitting on a hill, and watching the setting sun, or simply taking a long bath. Remove yourself from the maddening crowd and give yourself the opportunity of experiencing the quiet, gentle goodness of life. Refresh and recreate yourself in peaceful solitude and observe with wonder the amazing possibilities of your life. So what she taught me that day was to go within and connect with God and allow God to express through me creatively. And I have found this lately in my life because I've returned to a creative side of myself in the work that I do. And I know now how much I missed that. And each one of us express creatively. We all have our own ways. Some of us are good with gardening. Some of us are excellent writers. Someone can pick up a picture, a pen and paper and do a sketching while they're sitting and listening to a talk. Max Cowdery did this. Grandpa Don's grandson. He just did that. So we all have creative avenues. And sometimes we forget about them as we get older. And I think that when you connect back into that place and allow it to flow through you, then you can go back into the maddening world. And you're much more grounded and focused. And you continue to be creative in the words and the deeds and the thoughts that you have. I think it's a very good way to replenish yourself and recreate who you are. That's what I learned on day 2. Day 3 was October 31st. It was Halloween. So I knew what was in store, but I wasn't really sure what was going to happen. She took us up to the top of Outlook Mountain, where the retreat center was, and it overlooked a cliff, and it was beautiful trees as far as you could see. And because it was October, they were all colors, orange, red, yellow. It was gorgeous. And we went up and we stayed on this location all day. We had a food trucked up to us. And we started about noon. And it was a process. At first, Edwene started to tell us the history of fire walking. And so we listened intently. Meanwhile, she had some aides that came in and were bringing wood in and beautifully stacking them in a tall chimney-like. They were stacking the wood, and as she told the story and the history and the spiritual essence of fire walking, we were all amazed at the beauty and the stories, and we all had anxiety building once again. But one thing about Edwene, if you know her, is she likes to push you to the edge of whatever your edge might be, because she knows that that's where all growth happens. So that day we learned ritual and ceremony of fire walking. It was an all-day process. And what she taught us was that always begin with prayer, as I chose to today. She also taught us about loving ourselves, trusting ourselves, and embracing the God self within, and reminding ourselves of that often throughout a day. She also taught us about opening our heart. In order to receive God consciously, mindfully, and willingly, you have to open your heart. Sometimes that may take forgiveness. Sometimes that may mean becoming brutally truthful with yourself, honest, living with integrity. All those things open your heart. When you can look at another after you've loved yourself, you instantly have a bond and a loving and an understanding, because you've been through pain. You've been through love. You've been through caring. You see it in another and you immediately connect when your heart is open. She also taught us about trusting the process, which I think I've talked about many times here. Trust the process. I think process is, you may not know what this moment means. You may have to wait many years to see how something that you're going through today will affect your life. But when you turn around and you look back on it and you say, well, what would my life be if that hadn't have happened to me? Where would I be? You begin to look at challenges as gifts in your life that created the person that you've become. She also taught us about looking fear in the eye and feeling it deeply, whatever it may be. And she asked, when you feel the fear, to learn the message that it brings and be grateful for it. And then you go tell it to rest in the corner. So on that day, she told us to step into our truth and know within that there's no turning back. Because once you start and you take that first step, you don't stop. You have to keep going forward. That was one of my other lessons. The fire was built, and as the sun began to set, we began to pray. We shared from our hearts, we cried, we laughed, and we expressed total gratitude for the opportunity we were given. Our life, the opportunity to be there together, to experience Halloween on a mountainside with a huge bonfire burning. And then we were given a chant by Edwene. It's always a different chant every time she takes people on a fire walk. So she never knows what's going to come up, and sometimes she apologizes because she says, this is just what came out. This is what you're going to chant today. So we began to chant. And chant. And we continued to chant for well over an hour. The circle, we chanted and circled the fire as the embers were raped into a pathway to freedom, a pathway to empowerment. And then we were given the okay to walk when we felt guided to do so. And this was another important lesson. And if you know Edwene, a couple of you do, she'll flat out tell you, I haven't gotten my guidance on that yet. You're going to have to wait. And she's very firm about that. And I kind of run my life that way too. It drives my partner Larry nuts, but that's okay. Because I'll flat out say, I just can't. I can't. You have to wait. I just haven't gotten my guidance yet. And until I get my internal guidance, I'm not going to go. So she made that very clear to us that we had to pay attention to our internal selves, not what's going on out around us. It's when we feel ready to walk, you walk. So people began to walk, and we continued to chant. The chant was, I trust the wisdom of my heart, and I bring it on home to my people. We repeated it over and over again until it became ingrained in the fibers of our being. Trust the wisdom of my heart and bring it on home to my people. Now that has many meanings, but it was deep for me. I felt drawn to walk to the edge of the embers, and I stood there and I looked out as their fiery glow was glistening in the night. It was dark, and all I saw were the reflections of all the people standing around the embers. And I thought, I think now is my time to go. And I walked, and I crossed. And I realized that I felt like I had floated across. It was one of those moments of just being in awe. And I have felt that feeling before, chanting, you tend to do that. But it was just this walk across, and everybody walked, and it was all good. And then there were a couple of us that were drawn to do it again. Of course, it was me. Yeah. Let's do it again. Why not? But it was a different walk. It was interesting how different the second walk was. Many people chose not to. They thought one was enough, and they were checking the bottom of their feet. Ooh, look at that. Ooh, look at that. My feet felt great. I want to go again. And then I noticed one girl, a younger girl, was off to the side, and you could tell she was nervous, but yet leaning into it. as if she really wanted to do it, but she wasn't sure why. Now, Edwene had given us the option to just observe and hold space for all those who chose to walk, but then there were those who kind of hemmed and hawed and decided not to. Some hemmed and hawed and decided to go. But here was this girl, and you could tell she had tears going down her face. It was like she knew that if she didn't walk, she would regret it forever. She had this opportunity on this auspicious night with all of us holding space for her, and she really wanted to go. And as she leaned in towards the embers, I felt compelled to walk up and put my hands on her shoulder. Just as I felt this flow moving through me as I walked, I put my hands on her shoulder, and she immediately put her hands out, and two people went to her and held her hands. And somehow, we all knew what the process was, and I just held her back as I walked the third time with her. Now, as I walked, I knew if she got scared, I would be stuck on the embers, right? But it is as if we guided her to fly across the embers. It was the most beautiful moment of the evening. And I'll never forget it, because I knew in that moment I understood the connection to basic goodness and allowing it to use me as a vessel. It wasn't me who walked that third time. It wasn't me at all. In fact, in retrospect, sometimes I see it as an observer. And I was just, you saw my physical body, but I stayed back and watched and held space. So it was a beautiful moment. And we closed the ceremony down in prayer and gratitude. I trust the wisdom of my heart, and I bring it on home to my people. Edwene gave us all a gift. Well, she gave us many gifts that weekend. But when she sent us on our way, she gave us a shirt. And this is what it said. I walk on fire, and so what? Now, if you understand Edwene, you would know that this means be humble. It was just a moment, and God was there. We were all present. We were all one. Move on. Take this information, keep it close to your heart, and share it on a regular basis. She also said, you are the light of the world. Go forth and shine brightly. I love that. The drive home was long, and a great deal of it was in silence. I reflected on the takeaways that day. Start with prayer and breath and appreciation. Basic goodness is everywhere and everything. All things, all people. There is nowhere that it is not. Always, always remember that. And that basic goodness, that God source that's everywhere, I am that. You are that. You are all a child of God. I can't say it unless I say, you are a child of God, my dear. That's Edwene. She also said, create often and allow the divine to move through you. Create often. I encourage you to go home today and create. Share the light. One spark of love can create a bonfire of love. And the last one I wrote down was, be humble and kind. I trust the wisdom of my heart, and I bring it on home to my people. So I invite you now to embrace the lessons that I learned. I hope they assisted you. So you can think about those, and I invite you to take a deep breath. Breathe in for 4. Hold for 4. Breathe out for 4. Settle for 4. Breathe in for 4. Hold for 4. Breathe out for 4. Settle for 4. You are wonderful because you are a child of God. You have been created in God's own image and likeness, according to a divine idea of perfection. Turn from all memories of past mistakes or appearances of failure and take hold of a new picture of yourself. Remind yourself that you are a channel for God's ideas of light, life, and substance. Praise and bless your mind for its alertness, its keen perception, and spiritual judgment. Praise and bless your body temple for its quick response to ideas of healing. You are a chosen vessel for the expression of nature of God. You are a chosen vessel, right where you are, for the manifestation of the perfect spiritual nature that is your true heritage as a child of a living God. Begin right now to accept the truth of your indwelling spiritual nature. Accept it by affirming, I am a channel for the free flow of spiritual peace and poise. Then relax and let go. Let God work in and through you. Spirit never forces, but flows bountifully and freely when it finds a free and open channel through which to pour its multiple of blessings. You are a child of God. This is basic spiritual truth. The truth of being as taught by Jesus. He declared, I and the Father are one. He encouraged us to do the same in his own words. Follow me. This is the day for you to begin following the truth that Jesus taught. Begin by letting your thoughts rise in prayer and meditation. Remind yourself again and again throughout the day, I am a child of God. I am a channel for the free flow of God's pure, abundant life. I am a channel for the free flow of God's love and blessings. You will find yourself beginning to express and manifest more and more of the perfection of your true spiritual nature, more and more of the glory and radiance of God. Your thoughts will be charged with new confidence, your words with new life, your body temple with new strength, your circumstances with new success. You are wonderful. This is the way God created you. You are the light of the world. Go forth and shine brightly. Take a deep breath in and please return to the space. Thank you so much.